that they are not to have failed to demonstrate this record of effectiveness for 2 consecutive years. If so, then we would remove them from operational status. So we present to you the regulations, and there is a last-minute item, a memorandum item, that identifies some changes to the document that was in your agenda packet. And in particular, if you'll look at the last-minute memorandum item, we've identified the page numbers that are listed here, such as page 2 of 6, line 32 and 33, refers to the original packet. You have a complete set of the new regs in the blue, but the items are describing what was in the agenda packet because some items have paginated over. Okay. In particular, key things is that we're asking the regulations are directing 2 key issues. This window of application process, which would close on March the 1st to allow the department to do the background check and come forth to the board sometime for approval prior to the start of the new fiscal year. So the regulations say the window is going to close on March 1st and that they would be approved and begin on July 1, which is the fiscal year. The second key issue that you'll find in here of substantive changes is that we're directing the providers at the end of each fiscal year to submit an annual report due to us by October 1 on their effectiveness, how they've worked with the individual students, and how they've improved their academic achievement. There are some varieties of data elements that they could select. It's listed as national, state, district, or local, or other assessments, and we're asking for specific information on how they've improved. The regulations say performance levels, but the performance levels could refer to our CST performance levels. They could refer to norm referenced increases if that were the data element that they were submitting, or some performance level by the local or other instrument that the provider is using. Well, in the regulations on item, let's see, they would be in the blue that you have in front of you. It's listed on page 5 of the last minute memorandum, and there are the specific items that they are required to submit information on. We will uniform, if this is approved and goes into operation, we will then uniform that structure of reporting mechanism. Correct.
That's right. The districts use their Title I funds.
School, in other words, they've not performed well?
Title I schools in the second year of program improvement
okay.
must begin offering supplemental services, and they must continue through year 5 on the program improvement ladder.
Do you have many of these programs that are run by teachers?
We have a number of school districts that actually operate them, but run by teachers per se, we'd have to look and check that out. I can't answer that directly.
All right, and do these programs have a prescribed amount of time that the student must be in them?
It varies from provider to provider.
In other words, they contract with the school that I can get this done in 2 days a week of
yes.
3 hours of
yes.
whatever.
And it's parental choice. The law requires that the parents choose the provider, and then the school district contracts with that provider. Then an individual plan of assistance to each child is then developed.
How many students are in programs like this?
How many, excuse me, what was the question?
Students are in programs such as this.
Let me think. Bear with me just 1 second. We have approximately...
Is it better to say schools?
We have about 20,000 students.
20,000 students.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
I had to go to the right database in my head to pull that out.
You did pretty well. Thank you.
Any other board comment on this? And I appreciate the changes that were made, because I was concerned about them, that 2 out of the 3 criteria were essentially self-assessments, which I was uncomfortable with. So it seems to be a better fix, and thank you very much. So do we have a motion?
If I could make one correction on the blue, and that is in the first set of amendments at number 1, it talks about improved student academic performance in individual student scores. And I'm wondering why we're putting individual there. Why don't we just say in student scores? Why do we have to have individual?
Because the providers are providing services to individual students. They're on a one-on-one contract basis.
But this is to get onto the list. This is to prove demonstrated record of effectiveness. So how are they going to do that unless they violated their confidence and gave you individual student scores?
They can,
You want to see individual student scores?
I don't want individual identifier names, but we wanted to know that they've worked with individual students and that we have.
You're not looking at an aggregate number, you're looking at individual students?
We are looking at an aggregate number that is described within in the annual reporting, and that's where that they must have shown a demonstrated record of effectiveness with a majority of the students that they've served. That's to remain onto the list.
Okay, so I guess I don't understand why you need the word individual.
Well, again, because the providers are providing services individually for students because the parents have directed or asked for that option so that they could improve their.
It sounds like there's no downside to taking it out.
Well, they're
Is
not
that right?
on the list yet. So they're not providing it. I'm Sylvan Learning Centers, or I'm St. Mary's after-school program, and I'm doing a faith-based thing, and I've never been on your list before. So are you asking to go to the parents that brought their children there, and you want to see their individual student scores so that somehow they're going to sanitize all those and give them to you? These are not children in a public school system.
Understood.
Okay, so that I'm just trying to clarify. That's what you want to do?
Well, again, with the intent that we had some individual record. Otherwise, what you'll have is someone says, we worked with 300 students and showed improvement on 75% of them. It's a matter of the documentation that a provider submits to us for us to be able to have some.
Okay, I'm just trying to clarify. So what we're saying as the state of California is that when a faith-based organization wants to participate in the program, they have to be able to show you individual student scores to do the demonstrated record of effectiveness.
Yes, but there are, the other that is in here is the assessments that is listed in here, or other assessments. So they may have been working with their faith-based organizations and working with students to.
Right, it's just if those parents, which I can tell you right now, working with the private schools, they typically won't allow that. So what you're saying is that they'd have to either have parent permission or somehow be able to say that they're going to sanitize all those documents if you have to have copies of the individual student scores. I mean, that's what you're asking for, individual student scores. These are not people already on your, I mean, I'm fine, I'll let it go. I just wanted the board, and I wanted an understanding of what it was you were doing. So you're actually, so if the, for example, my daughter went to a private Adventist school, if they want to become a provider, you need to have my daughter's individual student score.
But not her individual information.
Right, but her
No,
score.
identifying information.
Right, okay.
But it is a voluntary system we're setting up.
No, I understand. I just wanted to clarify it. Thank you.
Okay, do I have a motion for the commencement of the rulemaking process? Janine, second by Ruth. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, now we're on to waivers. WC1 through WC13. Anybody that would like? Oh.
Yeah, I know that you've got some people that need to leave early, but I have a number of withdrawals, and I think we can work through this in a rapid manner here. The first thing I wanted to do, introduce myself as Judy Pinnaker, the waiver office for the department. I did want to give a verbal report on the algebra waivers that you had asked for. Originally, we had 13,000 students approved. Of the waivers, those waivers, only 3,800, or 2%, were actually used. So that's a big difference, and it's kind of what I think Ray and others were predicting when they saw the times of forms that were sent in. However, of the 2%, or the 3,000 students who needed the waiver, about 48%, or roughly half of them, were special education students. And so that's kind of, I'm still missing some reports, but that's my preliminary. I do have some changes now on the consent item. These are the WCs. And if you have the blue sheet that Deborah sent you that has all the waivers listed as one, or else you can turn to the WC package, whatever. Okay, right, these are not the WCs, she's correct. So the WCs are on consent, you have to just look at your folder. I have an announcement for WC7 and WC8 that we erroneously listed 33051C as applying. That would be the clause that would say it would be permanent. And both of these waivers are for less than 2 years, so they will not become permanent. These districts will have to reapply to get a permanent waiver. Is there any questions from any of the board members about other consent items? Then you can move.
Okay. Have a motion to approve WC 1 through 13 changes. Ricky, second. Ruth? All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously.
Okay, then I have a number of withdrawals, and happens to be that most of them are denials, so this is going to make it easier. W1 is withdrawn by Riverside. This is the API waiver. W4 has been withdrawn by, that was actually a District 4, a charter school, Eagles Peak Charter School. First, W1 has been withdrawn. We're not going to discuss it. W4 has been withdrawn. That's the Eagles Peak Charter of the older age students. Then I have W15, which was also withdrawn by the district. That was a denial of a safe and drug-free program funding waiver. And then I think you've already heard, well, you know that Wiseburn withdrew their waiver, and so that would be W27. So I have 4 withdrawals, 1, 4, 15, and 27. Then there was a clarification on W11 that the materials mentioned in that waiver were non-adopted materials, but the district did confirm that they are also using Open Court and Houghton Mifflin with their kindergarten grade level students, so the other programs were just supplemental. So with those announcements, I think we've agreed on proposed consent items being W5, W6, W7, W9, W10, W11, W12, W13, W14, W19, and W21, unless there's a board member that wants to talk about one of those.
Actually, I have a question. We had a conversation about the minute issue in that school district, that there was some...
I have 2-minute waivers that are still going to be talked about later.
Okay.
These are just the proposed, there's only one of those that's going to propose. Sure.
One, 4.
Proposed consent, what we're going to move next would be starting with 5. Well, 1 and 4 were withdrawn. So now we're talking about what's on proposed consent. So it would be 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11. They all should be in light blue on your the bolding indicates they're going to be discussed later. Oh. Okay, so let me just, now that you have your little chart, let me start again. We're going to do proposed consent for W5, 6, and 7, 9, 10, and 11. Okay. Yes. What happens, there's a law right now that says that if you're a unified district, you cannot put your students together, grades K through 8, if they're in a community day school, which are students who have been... Okay, this district asked to waive that part of it so they can keep K through 8 together and then just do high school levels separate. Are there other questions then on something?
Anyone else on any of the consent items that Judy's named? Okay, and we're all clear on the numbers that were...
I hope.
Okay.
Let me do it one more time. 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, 19, 21.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Yes,
Right.
Deborah explained to you that she had done her thing Monday and had moved some over afterwards.
It's all right. Okay, Janine, motion by Janine, a second. Ricky, all those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, so the first one that we need to discuss would be W2. This is a bond indebtedness waiver, and I know none of you new board members, I think, have seen any such waiver. It was alluded to earlier when Weisburn and Centinela were here. It would be a means which Centinela could increase their bond indebtedness if they really had to spend some money right now. So I have Stel Cordano from the Department of Education, and each of these are individual. The first one is Moreland Elementary School District. And there's also some people from the district if you need to hear from them.
Good afternoon. My name is Stel Cordano. I'm from School Fiscal Services Division. And as we discussed this morning regarding bond indebtedness and assessed value, it ties into the next two items. Typically, voters approve general obligation bonds for capital projects. And as Superintendent O'Connell stated this morning, one way to issue bonds above your cap is to request a waiver. And so today we have two districts, Moreland Elementary School District and San Isidro, who are requesting to exceed their bonding capacity limit. And the board has typically approved these in the past. The first one is Moreland Elementary School District. It's requesting to increase its cap to 1.76%. And currently it issues about $3 million annually for major improvements. And this waiver will allow the district to issue its remaining $23 million, which is about 21 million above its limit. And it anticipates to fall back within the limit by 2009. And the waiver is needed because of budget cuts. Two school districts were consolidated into one. And unfortunately, existing facility problems significantly worsened because of the consolidation. The student population went from 350 to 700. So if you approve this waiver, it would allow the district to do the expansions within the next couple years instead of they estimate about 9 years. We anticipate also approval of this bond or this waiver would save about $7.8 million in construction costs and also about $1 million in issuance costs. So we recommend approval on the conditions that it not exceed 1.76% and the sale of the bonds approved on the March 2002 election. You have any questions?
Are there any questions of the district?
Right. Any questions by any of the board members? Okay, move. And a second? Do I have a second? Ricky again, or Reed? Okay. Ricky seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, and the second one we have is San Isidro School District. It's requesting to increase its cap to 2.15%. And this would allow the district to issue $40 million of general obligation bonds, which is about $24 million above its limit. And the reason the district is requesting this, because it has an opportunity to purchase 20 acres for a new school that's needed in the district. The existing school facility capacity is about 4,000 students, and it actually has enrollments of over 5,100. And enrollment is expected to continue because there's going to be new development. In addition, the new development is causing construction costs to increase. So therefore, approval of this waiver would allow the district to acquire and construct a new school to accommodate the current enrollment and future student population. So we again are recommending approval with the conditions that it does not exceed 2.15% and the sale of the bonds approved of the March 1997 election.
Board comment, questions? All right. Do you have a motion? Janine. Second, Suzanne. All those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries, passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, moving along.
All right, now we go to W8. This was Gilroy Unified School District. And the reason that Deborah brought it to your attention was that when this came forward, it was over the summer. This is a request for equity length of time. So in other words, the longer day kindergarten, you've seen many of these. Most of them go on proposed consent. This is one where they had not convened the school site councils previous to being able to put the waiver forward because they kind of decided to do it over the summer. So because that wasn't done, and that is a reason for denial if the school site councils did not participate, we're suggesting that we add a condition to the district so they can get approval, but with a condition that, and I'm suggesting approval on the condition the district provide copies of newsletters sent and proof of meetings of all school site councils and any negative comments back to the board through the waiver office by November 1st.
All right. No board comment, I bet. Okay. Do I have a motion to approve with the recommendations? Suzanne. Second, Don Fisher. All those in favor? Any opposed? No. The motion carries unanimously. Okay. Moving on, Judy.
Okay. I guess 17 would be our next one. These are waivers that you actually have a policy about. This is Ed Code 60119, which requires that annually school districts find or determine through resolution, and it has to have a public hearing noticed in certain ways, that they have sufficient text for all of their students. We have a policy that says that for the first time this happens in a district, the waiver is pretty much always approved, and these are all first-time ones. However, because of the board, the Williams concerns that's been issued recently, there was kind of question as to whether we might want to look at these a little more closely now. None of these schools is in rank 1 through 3, which is what the Williams focused on. They are all fairly high performing. Oak Park is a rank of 10, Los Altos is a rank of 10, and Kit Carson is a rank of 5. They all have reasons that, one of them did the hearing late, 2 others noticed it for less days than 10. And that's the legal noncompliance. The requirement would be to give all their money back that they were given that year, which doesn't seem terribly productive when you're buying books with it.
Move for approval of this waiver.
We have a second? Okay. By Janine. All those in favor? Any opposed? No. Motion carries. Okay.
Okay. W18. This is the first one of the minutes questions that Joe mentioned earlier, I believe. This is probably the one you were talking about because this is the largest number. As you heard at the last meeting, there used to be a limit of 900 minutes and below that the board could do waivers of. They couldn't waive something of this level. However, that law was changed, and so now this waiver is before you. The shortfall was 16,050 minutes, which amounts to about 10 minutes a day. And this district, what happened was they had a bell schedule. Well, first of all, they had something in their program booklet that wasn't accurate with what their bell schedule said. But the auditor, looking at the program in the book, said they had insufficient minutes, that they had too long of passing times. The district is counterclaiming that they really did have the bell schedule correct, but the auditor didn't look at that. So they were found out of compliance for 10 minutes a day. The required makeup is that for 2 years, in the grade levels that were affected, which is 4 through 8, you make up the regular minutes and plus the extra 1,650, which would bring them to 58,350. This is actually, the other thing I wanted to say to you, this is actually higher than the state minimum right now. They were stuck at a 1992-93 level, which happened when that law went through. A lot of districts were providing more than the minimum the state set, so this was one of those. So even though they did provide less by 1,600 minutes, it was really more than the state minimum for that grade level. But they're still penalized because they're supposed to be doing the higher level. Yes.
These trouble me a great deal just in my general philosophy is that it's a terrible thing to have 10 minutes more a day of schooling for the next year. I mean, is that a horrible thing? I don't think so. And I'm glad that they had more to begin with, but I do believe we have to follow through with this and make sure that we have that extra 10 minutes a day until they've used up their quota. I just find it offensive that we always have to measure education in terms of minutes, that's a personal thing. So I would move for approval of this.
Okay, you guys are doing it without me. Great. We have it all sewn up. Good. I was looking at the next. Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? All right, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. W20.
W20 is a similar circumstance, Redondo Beach Unified School District, Jefferson Elementary School. The reason this was left on consent, ordinarily, it's only 360 minutes. It would have been less than 900, and per our discussion, we would have just left it on proposed consent. But the union has apparently voiced opposition to this waiver to the board office, and also in several of the documents that are attached. I did call the district because we're really concerned that the district was promising to provide the minutes, and indeed, the district told me as of this morning they have a signed MOU from the union that they will provide the minutes. So although they're protesting, I don't think they're not going to provide the minutes. And so we're recommending, it's about 1 minute a day, 2 minutes a day. We're recommending that you go forward with the requirement to provide the time.
Well, I'll tell you what the issue is. The issue is that the teachers want the district to tell the public that this was a mistake. And they want to figure out a way, because they feel that their reputations have been besmirched at the local level, and they want their good names cleared. That when the audit of the minutes was made, that the teachers believed that the auditors had incorrect data when they made the determination, and that they actually do not need to do this. While they don't object to doing it, they would like a recognition that in fact there was a mistake made, and that they would like to just get on with school.
Okay, that being said,
would there be a way to incorporate some acknowledgement of that into approval?
The audit was certified by the controllers because the district agreed that it had been an accurate audit finding. So I think we're kind of past the point of changing the audit rules.
That's fine.
all right, no,
But they will still make up the 2 minutes for 2 years.
correct. Okay,
Move.
so, and a second? Bonnie, all those in favor? Any opposed? Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, now we come to a waiver that's doesn't happen very often, and my legal office and myself and staff from the facilities spent a lot of time working on this to try and make it as best as we could. We're on 22. It's San Jose Unified School District, and they're waiving some sections and portions of sections of the sale and lease of surplus property, provisions of the sale and lease of surplus property. And they're doing it specifically for the Hammer School site, these are all schools that are closed, former Erickson site, and former Crossroads Community Day School site. And I think I'll let the district come up and explain. They've basically gotten themselves into a situation where they have a lot of excess property, and they find some of these laws that you see listed in terms of how many days they have to wait between doing one step and the next. It's kind of like you guys and how you have to put out for 45 days and then 15 days and whatever. They're finding some of these steps constraining. We can go through them individually if you'd like to, or I can have the district, I have several people here to talk for the district. Don Iglesias, Jerry Matrango. Oh, well, they're waiting in line. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Don Iglesias, Superintendent for San Jose Unified School District. Pleasure to be here. Interesting to see democracy in action, and it's much better on this side of the table than that, you know, for a change. Just a quick intro on what the issue is from our standpoint. We are, as you know, in severe declining enrollment in the San Jose area. Cost of housing, birth rate, jobs, lack of jobs has had a dramatic effect on our school district. We've lost hundreds of kids. We're going to lose another 900 in the next 2 years. We closed 3 schools in June. We'll probably, or actually 4 schools, and we'll probably close additional schools in 05-06. Part of that process is we also cut $30 million from our budget, looking at cutting another $9 million. So we're looking at being expeditious in our ability to be able to lease our school sites. There's a glut of property on the market in Santa Clara Valley. You can get some great value right now, but it's difficult to be able to lease property. School property is very niche market in terms of its usability, and we would like to be able to speed up the process. We've already used some of our schools that are now vacant for our charter school. Is one of the schools. We've used some for the county office. We've used some for ROP, and we still have space and we still have a school that we'd like to be able to access. And Sonia can give you a little bit of details of the parts of the waiver that we're requesting. Thank you.
Don, would it be fair to say before you get into the details that if we approve the waiver, it'll make it more efficient for you to get money into the district? That's the heart. That's the heart of it. That's probably all you need to do. Do we need any more discussion?
I think we can cut this short. I think that's an excellent suggestion because we're hurting for you. We feel this pain, definitely. I'm sorry.
Love to make a motion to approve it with conditions as recommended by staff.
And do I have a second? Bonnie, all those in favor? Any opposed? No. The motion passes unanimously. I think Ruth is with us on that.
Okay, now we go to a group of 4 waivers you can kind of almost take together in a way. This is the California Virtual Academy. They have been before you a couple of times here, actually, although I don't think we've ever actually spoke about them before the board. Oh no, they did once. I'm sorry. Anyway, the first 2 waivers, and I have Marta Diaz here from the department to help me if that's needed. The first 2 waivers are regarding the independent study ratios that are required by law for both regular schools and by charters. And, oops, I'm sorry. No, I'm starting out with the wrong ones. Oh, yes, excuse me. 23 and 24, I am starting with the ratio ones. The original waiver request from the Virtual Academy came in at a higher level. They've modified their request to go down to request 35 students to 1 teacher. The department still feels that's too high, and we're suggesting that we give a ratio that is consistent with a regular independent study, and we have a policy on that. It's a policy number 0103 that talks about a 10% above what would normally be the case under the law with a maximum of 1 to 30, and that's what the department is suggesting for these 2 waivers, 23 and 24. Is there comments? I think Virtual Academy was agreeing with that. Yes.
Okay, board discussion on this? No comment? All right.
I've got a question then. Ray, will you clarify? This is just the teacher part?
Yes, just
It's not the
23
740 part.
and 24.
And 24 for Kern and San Diego.
And what's being approved would then be a waiver of 10% over what would normally be required with a maximum of 1 to 30 ratio.
Yep.
1 to 30 or 1 to 30?
So moved.
1 to 35, is that correct?
No, we're only suggesting 10% over 1 to 30 max. They asked for 1 to 35.
Approve with conditions, and the condition is 1 to 30.
All right.
And the 1 to 30 is actually the ratio that you use in regular, in another program, isn't it?
That's what your policy is for regular schools, independent study, and all the waivers that I've done so far have been that level, 10% over.
Great. And, okay, thank you.
Okay. Do I have a motion on the floor? Reed?
So
Okay,
moved.
thank you. Ricky? And all in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. On to 25.
The second 2 waivers, the department had originally recommended denial because the district had come in asking to receive full funding with less than 50%, but more than 40% of the expenditures for being required for certificated staff costs. That's how the waiver came in. So at that point, the department did recommend denial. We've had a lot of negotiations since then, and we do have a revised recommendation that the department is putting forth, which is approval of a 10% reduction in the amount to be spent on certificated salaries to still get full funding, matching the 10% ADA teacher waiver. For the 2004-05 year, 45% must be spent on certificated salaries by this charter to still get full funding. However, and we'd really like to add this, all future year funding levels must be sent through the advisory committee for charter schools.
I didn't realize that there was a new recommendation. I thought it was still denial, but I will tell you that I've spent a considerable amount of time on this issue, and I've talked with the people involved in it. The concern that I have is that it's coming through on a waiver. the process that this board designed, and this is pursuant to Jack's bill that you've heard many times, 740, as well as Reed was very engaged in that when it came through, as well as this board developing regulations on how to proceed with that. And that's the funding determination. And what the board said is when you're going to determine funding levels for non-classroom based instruction, that you go to the ACCS, the Charter School Advisory Commission, and they make the initial cut at that, and then they give you a recommendation. And what you said also was that you wanted 80% spent on instruction and you wanted 50% spent on certificated staff. Now, what you have is before you is the virtual school, and that's a good thing. We want charters to be out of the box, and this one is out of the box, and so what you're feeling with this waiver is a struggle for how you deal with that. And my suggestion in how you deal with that is regulatory, and as a precursor to that, a policy. And so my suggestion would be that in November you come back with the policy. I think that there's a very good draft sitting out there. You just have not had ACCS formally weigh in on it, though they have shown great support for it so far. There is one element of the policy that I'll be working, well, I'll just tell you that there's one piece of it that I think might not be good. But
at the heart of the policy, it's if you do well academically, then you can get some exceptions in this process.
Although we have a process. That's the point.
I agree. I'm agreeing with you. I'm just saying that just to give some context of what this coming policy, what is it really addressing? It's different than this, which is, this is a straight waiver request.
That's right. This is saying that rather than going through that process with the Charter Schools Advisory Commission and then coming forward with a determination, they would prefer to skip that and just come to you with a waiver and have those provisions waived. And then they might still go through the process, but it would be a done deal because you would have waived the requirements for them. What I'm saying is that if you want to look at mitigation, meaning that they're going to go below 80% on instruction, which actually I think that's not the case, but or less than 50% on class or their teachers, which is actually the issue here, that's that you look at what mitigation is and that you give some flavor to what mitigation is so that when the Charter School Advisory Commission looks at it, they can tell you. And so that's the reg that I'm asking you to entertain in November, not just waiving it so that you arguably would have all of these coming. So you've had other non-classroom based. They all have issues with the 80-50. Some of them, as you heard yesterday, at least arguably made the 80-50, and they still didn't get the 100% funding. This virtual school actually did get 100% funding for 03-04. They're looking prospectively to 04-05. And the question is, how do you want to proceed with that? Do you want to do them individually by waivers, or do you want to do it with a regulatory process so that you can still utilize your Charter School Advisory Commission, let those who are experts in the field take the first cut at it, and then have it come back to the board, which is what I recommend to you. As to academic progress, the policy, the way it stands right now, ergo the regs that would follow, are based on spans of API scores. So if you were between, and I'm making these numbers up, but they're probably pretty close. If you're between 750 and 800, then you're just in like Flint. So whatever the problem, you get 100% funding. If you're down below that, maybe we have to take a look at it. Maybe you're at 80%.
You're not suggesting we debate the policy now, right? You're just saying it's an example.
Right, and I'm actually doing it because I won't be here, and I want you to remember that. And I'm going to suggest to you that you look at growth as opposed to a static API number. So you're right that I'm just suggesting on the process that this is not a good process, that you don't do it by waiver, that you do it by regulation, and you can do that in November. And in good faith to the charter school, who I will tell you has in some sense been drugged through on this process since they started last year and they're still here without resolution, that they may not have total faith about what will happen. And so you could do a policy in November, adopt it, which is a good faith statement, and start the regulatory process, which probably, if you do it expeditiously, would complete in February.
And how is it that they got full funding for last year, 03-04?
Well, they're in the
Did they get
audience.
it?
I'd rather let them address that.
Actually, they would like to talk to you also.
Yeah,
I have time constraints, and so I have to be leaving. I'm going to move denial of this waiver. Hope I'll get a second. I know you want to debate this ad nauseum, and we want to hear from them, and we'll have that opportunity to do it. I feel very strongly that the process has not been followed. I feel very strongly that we should follow Ray's recommendation, so I hope that I can get a second on my motion.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Okay.
Are you going to vote with this?
I'd like to hear from the
I think, yeah, that's what I.
Discussion now. 'cause
Right.
we can-
The motion is on the floor. We're open to discussion. We can still hear from the Virtual Academy folks.
Which I do
But
want
Ruth,
to
go
hear,
ahead.
but this came before us, I believe, in March, and it was recommended then that it go back to ACCS.
Correct.
And it didn't.
No, it did go back.
It did go back, but they
was
didn't
no
have a quorum
recommendation,
or a
right.
recommendation. So we did have a process that we followed, and I really believe that there's going to have to be a wider overview of this type of charter, considering what went on yesterday and considering today, and there's many more of these virtual charters, if you will, or online charters. But we did make an effort at this board, I mean, in March, to have it go there and to follow a process. But I think it behooves the commission to help us in this area. That's why we've set up these separate commissions.
Right. There's a 740 issue. We have the ACCS recommendation. I
Yes.
agree with what you're saying about following the process, the people that are closest to the projects and who
But
are
we did it-
interacting.
We did
Right.
that last time, and I
That's
don't
correct.
understand
So
why we didn't get any
We're
kind
back
of-
here with this waiver, which is why Ray is suggesting the regulatory,
To
the
specifically
change of regs on
to
this, or
answer
excuse me.
your
start
question,
the policy and then the
ACCS
regs.
developed a policy. They did not have over the in their summer meeting a quorum. So it was 4-1, but you need 6. So they didn't get a vote for it, so we don't have an official policy in front of us. In addition, Ray, myself, others have some concerns about the specific policy and would love to see some tuning of it. So that's the second level of it. So it's in process, but it's not complete. And you're absolutely right that we told these guys, hold on, let ACCS deal with it. And then here they are back 6 months later. And from their perspective, I'm sure we seem, typical state bureaucracy dragging their feet.
But tell me something on the, in terms of the Charter School Advisory Committee, do they not have an opportunity for a teleconference, or like we do with some issue that's coming up that has a time certain deadline with it? And I mean, that is a flexibility that they have, do they not?
Yes, they do.
So I think that would have the
didn't get
advisory committee working with their charter school people and coming up with some kind
So
of
I'm fine with that. Practically, are they allowed, budget-wise, to call additional meetings and all that? They didn't get hacked back by DOF to reduce their meetings?
By teleconference?
We were asked to reduce all of our meetings, including the board meetings, down to actually to 1, which we have a statutory requirement to do 6. But they still could do teleconference meetings if they needed to, and those aren't too expensive. It's the cost of the call. And I have no idea what the requirements were at that level, why they lost a quorum. But I think there are a lot of issues, and it was a very difficult policy that they were wrestling with. So.
And that's stated well. There were some concerns that came forward from the county superintendents with regards to the policy, and so we're trying to engage that group beyond the ACCS to make sure that we're responsive to some of their thoughts, as well as I've heard from the board members today some more thoughts. So I think that really did compel the Virtual Academy to want to come forward and look at a policy. We have it for a year, which is a standard, but it doesn't have to be, does it? Could it be a shorter term policy perhaps?
I don't know.
A waiver, I mean? Could it be less than a year?
What I'm suggesting to you is that not to do a waiver. I'm suggesting that you are going down a path. Just like when we did the Algebra 1 waivers, we knew when we granted that first waiver that we were going to have 14,000 come forward. And there's no way for us to say, well, Lode, I got one, but not you. Yeah. And this is the same process. And there's no natural stopping point, so my suggestion is that you don't go there. And in all honesty, this is for their 0405, and that policy can address that as well as the regs. So it's not as if they would necessarily be prejudiced by it. It's not their 0304 funding. They got 100% funding. So they're getting a head start ahead of the others. They were very proactive and and far thinking, which is visionary, and so the virtual charter, that would make sense. But
Ray,
I think you have plenty of time.
Going the timeline that you think we should do, November, we send out updated regulations on the
Yes.
740 process. By how long would it get, we then have to, is it January then
Yes.
that it would be complete? Or doesn't it take a couple months in OAL and all that?
No, well, what happens is if you send, I'm asking you to do two things.
Okay,
Good faith to the charter school by doing a policy, so
Yep.
that you have a commitment with them.
waiver policy essentially?
No, not
okay.
a waiver policy, just a policy. You've done policies many times prior to doing regs. Then secondly, that you start the regulatory process in November. That's 45 days, which takes you to January.
Yep.
That you hold the public hearing, you adopt the regs in January, and then they go to OAL. They're effective within 30 days. But even, let's say there's a glitch, because heaven knows you've seen that before, where there's another 15-day requirement. You've got the policy there. So you've given some guidance to ACCS as to what you think mitigation means. And you're saying with respect to a virtual charter, and you've laid out some of the criteria you want them to look at, you've given some guidance to help with what happens when they go through ACCS, even if something, God forbid, happened to your regs.
So it's just timing them. So when we establish this policy, which parallel tracks the regulations, because let's suppose the regs take a little bit longer,
Right.
or it's hard for them to wait until March, which would be the earliest to figure out the funding for that school year almost
Right.
completed. If we wanted to give them relief, wouldn't it be a waiver policy essentially that we would be using while the regulations are in progress?
No, not really, because
Okay.
you have policies on things that aren't waivers.
Well, the determination of, I'm sorry to do this so long, but afterwards we lose Ray. So the determination that the commission will have to make on this school for this year will have to follow their current regulations.
Yes, but the current regulations don't really go into what mitigation is. The current regulations just talk in terms of mitigation without any description of what that was. And what I'm telling you is they got 100% last time. And what I'm saying is mitigation is what you're going to define in the regs. Mitigation is what you'll look at in your policy.
So they could get 100% determination for this year and ACCS still be within their regs.
Right.
Okay.
And you're just giving guidance as to how to interpret those regs. I mean, that's the downside. That would be the downside way to go. I'm hoping that you don't,
Regs aren't ready.
if the regs aren't ready.
Ray, I have a couple of comments. One, I think the process is important, but because of that, I don't like to see any action delayed because they may not have had a quorum. So I would like I would like a message to go to the commission or the commission chair that if they see there's a problem in having physical members for a quorum, to do a teleconference or something, because I don't think it's right, separate from the merits of something, just to delay one way or the other because any arm of us.
Go back to them.
Yes,
I'm
and secondly, I just wanted to say that I'm hesitant, separate, I think it's important to get the experts and the commissions to give their feedback, but just on my own substance, I think that having a waiver to have a higher ratio, and then a waiver to, then to get full funding, I wonder what the policy is on that, because I'm a little troubled.
Well,
by
see,
that.
what I'm saying, and I know I'm getting technical here, but I'm actually asking you not to waive the law or your regs. And I'm telling you that rather than waive your regs, which has this 80-50 requirement, amend them. It's not the same to amend a statute, which you have no authority to amend it, so you waive it, and that's completely appropriate. When you see your regs are not working, there's a problem with them, which is obviously illustrated here with virtual charter, don't waive them. Amend them.
No, I hear you and I agree, and I'm just wondering what determines
Why don't we
how
hear
the
from the
commission,
school
is their process for determining whether they think something should be 100% funded or not?
Well, we gave them regs, the state board gave them regs that delineate what we think you'd look at to get 100% funding. Now, when they come to you, it's advisory only. You do not have to follow it. Typically, you give it great deference. And so you've got regs out there that say that. And the two main requirements that they're raising for you today is 80% of your money is spent on instruction and 50% of your money is certificated employees, your teachers. And what they're saying is, we're virtual. It doesn't make much sense to apply those rules. So what you've got in your regs is you said, you know what, we got 80-50, but if you show us mitigating circumstances, then we'll go ahead and let you have 100% funding. And in fact, they did get 100% funding last time they went through that process. And I'm just saying, you know what, give some guidance to ACCS through a policy on what mitigation is, help it define for a virtual charter what that might be, and amend your regs so that you're not in a process where you're having however many non-classroom based charters you've got coming here to circumvent because they think you're a better audience and they would rather just get a waiver and it'd be easier.
So could
How much are
Okay.
we talking about in dollars in this whole thing?
I think this is a significant amount of money.
A couple million.
We do a fiscal analysis.
Anyway, denying the waiver now still means the commission can come back and make a recommendation in November or something?
Right. In fact, what I'm saying is that you tell them to do that.
Oh, okay.
You say not only what you just said, Bonnie, which is, hey, you guys, it's the information age, use a teleconference, but also that you want to have that policy. And if it doesn't come from ACCS, then I would tell you that you tell the staff. You want a policy one way or the other. You move that in November and you start the regulatory process. And you're not restricted by whether ACCS is able to come up with a recommendation.
What you just said.
Okay.
Does this
Then
have
that would be
The last half an
denial
hour.
of the waiver which is Joe's motion.
Right, Joe has a motion.
don't like
We need a
delays
second on
because
that
of no
motion.
Well, let me ask you
Please, thank you. Please
question.
seconded. Okay, Don?
Is this having any impact on their being able to run their business because they don't know how much money they're going to be getting?
If you delayed it long enough, I think it would. And I'll tell you this, that
What's long enough?
well, they could tell you better than I could, but I will say this, that this is a thing that's applying to all non-classroom based charters. It is not limited to this virtual school. So every one of them, including Options for Youth and Opportunities for Learning that was here yesterday,
Right.
they want to have some assurance of funding. And you know, as a business person, that you want that as soon as you can get it. Certainty is always better. So they will all complain to you about that. And it's a legitimate concern.
Well, I look at it.
Sure.
Well, but it's the same issue that I brought up last time. The school district would love that same, guarantee if they would know exactly what the funding is going to be 2 or 3 years in the future. I mean, it's the same.
But school districts,
Okay,
for
you know what?
this year, no.
Let's hear from the charter folks, and then we're going to go to a vote, and we're going to do it rather quickly. So come on up, please. Thank you.
Can I just let you know that there is an ACCS meeting October 4th?
We've covered most of this, but I'd like to just make a couple comments. One, I think I need to answer Board Member Hastings' questions about how do you meet it if you're a virtual charter school or any charter school going through the funding determination process. As everyone knows in the school business, oh, by the way, I'm Jim Conance. I'm the head of schools for the California Virtual Academy, and I was formerly the assistant superintendent of schools with Los Angeles Unified School District. So I understand the process pretty well, and I would say to Mr. Nunez that we did follow the process, and you'll see that. But the funding determination process is very retrospective at best, because what happens is we don't even know what the total income is until April when your P2 is filed and certified by the state. So 8 months earlier, we're being asked to forecast what those percentages are, what 80% and 50% are 8 months in advance. And our whole reason for coming forward with a waiver process was because we wanted to be prospective in that and know what that funding determination process was in advance. I think the ACCS has recognized that, and Commissioner Barber has brought forward some language to be able to get the process more proactive instead of in the rears. How did we meet it the first time? Well, after school closed, after we got our final apportionment in July of last year, we had to go and make up the difference because we were under the 50%. So we had to spend money to bring it up to 50%. And it wasn't really a good investment of taxpayers' money because the work was already done. It was just providing money in order to meet those criteria. What our incentive this time is to try and meet that criteria in advance of actually the school year closing. We're in the same situation. I passed out my presentation, of which we aren't going to go through, but I would want to draw your attention to slide number 11. This is the timeline that we've gone through. I just wanted to answer Mr. Nunez's comment about we didn't follow the process. That's absolutely not correct. We did follow the process. you can see what happened from September of last year all the way through where we are today. We've been cooperative, we've been patient, we've tried to cooperate and put policy forward for consideration. However, it just hasn't happened. And I would ask you and plead to you that it is not our fault that we didn't follow process. We did follow process. Where we are today is we're asking for some resolution to our waiver request, hopefully in a positive manner, and with the recommendation, the caveat, the policy implications that this is to tide us over until we actually have new policy, a new procedure, and something that our state board can move forward with as policy for all charter schools that have to go through this.
If I understand it right, the waiver's been before us before, so if we don't deny it, it becomes effective. If they were to withdraw the waiver, it would naturally get considered in November. What I'm thinking is we say, if you guys withdraw the waiver, it'll automatically be on in November. And at that meeting in November, if we don't have the policy in shape, maybe we have the votes to do the waiver. And what we try to do is work really hard. So they have not a guarantee, but they have something coming up on the November agenda. Is that a?
And it's fine if they want to withdraw. Otherwise, you have to have a vote one way or another
Correct.
today, or it goes by operation of law.
Okay.
My name's Tom Boyson. I had a chance to meet you in March. I'm Senior Vice President, Chief School Officer of K-12 Inc., which is a company that supports California Virtual Academy and virtual academies in about 10 other states. As you were considering the district organization question, I was kind of reflecting on my career as a district superintendent, county superintendent, state education commissioner on attendance boundary changes, closing schools, and dealing with these reorganization issues. And I really want to thank you for your leadership on that and a score of other things. There seem to be many points of substantive agreement here. There's a lot of momentum to this. We live in a high-tech state. There's so much power in information technology, so we agree on that. And with Ray Belisle's three-point proposal, I'm in full agreement with two of the 3 points and just kind of examining the third one. Bring the policy back in November, get a new regulation, because this permits us now to have within the larger SB 740 regulation a set of guidelines for cyber schools, which some states have done more overtly and separately, but we have the context here and that can happen. And as was pointed out at the last ACCS meeting, I think there was a great consensus. It just happened to be too few people there to enact it, bring it here. So we're stuck now with CAVA has a dilemma. They already have a deficit. They can have a bigger deficit soon because they're like a little boat in a big sea. They submitted this waiver petition last September, actually, and then there were political events in the state that were in motion. It finally got to you in March. It was put over to the ACCS, and this is where I think an important decision was made. The board has dealt with the pupil-teacher ratio by means of a waiver policy. And so it was the CAVA view of the world that one of these things, and there are two sides of the same coin really, pupil-teacher ratio and percent for credential salaries, we're talking about what is the investment paradigm for a cyber school.
The difference, as Ray clarified, is that what we're waiving, the 31, is law versus our own regs.
Okay,
so
fine.
If that's correct, right? So
that was the thing that...
confusing.
And it's why, but it's really why CAVA came here for both, because they thought they're ultimately going to get determined by both.
Correct. So if we all understood this, we would have advised you to come to us for the waiver on the pupil teacher and a regulatory change, since there are our own regs. Yeah. So would you be willing to pull it for withdraw the waiver and have it come back in November?
Well, I think I would have to defer that to Jim, because he's the head of the
okay. And the other option is we can have a vote.
As far as I'm concerned, another alternative is to have the department recommend to the ACCS mitigating factor. They're on the record, I think, today at 45%, saying to you, we recommend a waiver at 45%. You're saying the ACCS can determine this on its own.
The problem with that path is you're going to drag us down debating the policy merits today now. Yeah. And it's not going to get the thoughtful hearing that you want.
Then I guess I would turn to Jack and say, are you willing to make that recommendation to the ACCS on mitigating factors?
You still have another speaker who I think has another point of view. And
Okay, thank you, Deborah, for reminding me. Can we hear from that other speaker, please?
Paul Markowitz. With CTA.
I will be very quick. Yes, I am Paul Markowitz with the California Teachers Association, and I can't say it any better than Ray has said it. Would oppose a waiver at this time on this issue. There is a process. It needs to be followed. It should be followed, and I think I strongly urge you to follow the recommendation of your executive director. Thank you.
Okay, at this point, I'd like to either get a withdrawal or call for a vote. And also, Judy, on this, we were not aware, this originally recommended for denial, and that was discussed apparently with staff, the state board staff and CD, yourself, I imagine, whoever deals with this.
Yes.
And now here we get a change.
That was negotiated yesterday. I sent it forward to Deborah yesterday.
No. Okay, there was a miscommunication, so I just want to put that out on the table in terms of this is a surprise to me as I look at it. So at this point, would you like to say a closing remark?
I would like to say
quickly,
closing remark. We believe it's in the best interest of us and others to have policy in place. So at this time, we'll take the recommendation of withdrawing our waiver on the floor and taking a look at that policy development. However, I would like to add the caveat that there be directive to either staff or ACCS to truly meet that timeline and come forward with a policy.
The waiver, would it kick to next meeting? If it's how do we get the same way? From my perspective, ideally, the waiver comes back to us in 60 days, and then we'll either handle it by policy or ultimately the waiver's all set.
Right, the waiver goes forward, I guess. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I like to
right.
I don't think that's what Ray intended, but I'm not sure. She's
right.
Ray, the question is, if they withdraw the waiver, can we bring it back on the agenda in November? Hopefully we won't need it because we'll have a policy.
If the charter school, if they want to bring it, withdraw on their own
they do.
And bring it back, then it's fine.
Okay.
Okay, and thank you for your travel and coming up here and telling us about your school and the situation and going through this process. I think what we need to do is make sure that our Charter School Advisory Committee meets as often either by teleconference or not, and I'm going to request that we, at the Charter School Advisory Committee meeting next, which I understand is fairly soon, that they'll do this, and they generate a report for the state board to let us know what occurred at that meeting.
I just want to thank you for the time and consideration.
Thanks very much.
Okay. Thank you.
Appreciate you withdrawing.
I wanted to ask, and maybe Reed knows. I know that if they had a quorum problem, is some of that due to the fact that they've got vacancies, and how many? Do you know?
I think there's only one vacancy, so I think it's more summer stuff. Is it correct, one vacancy? Yes, there's only one, right? Yeah, that's the.
Thank you, Deborah.
Okay. Are we done?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. We're on to the next one.
Yes, I did put in a placeholder, W27, which had some general information, but the real document would now be this W28, excuse me, blue document that is related to 4 waivers that have now been submitted. These are all waivers from districts for charter schools to take over closed sites from the California Charter Academy. The first 2 waivers, well, I don't know if I should. The first 2 waivers are similar, and they have to do.
We have a blue on this, sorry.
Yes, you do. Maybe I should take each one because they are slightly different.
There are 4 blues?
It is, no, it is not. It's all stapled together in one.
Got it. Thank you.
W28. The first one is Grant Joint Union High School District for the Futures High School Charter and the Grant Community Outreach Academy Charter. And what they need to waive is some real specific conditions of the law which allows you to serve a charter in another district's jurisdiction. So the charter that they're trying to take over is in Elk Grove's district. They are in Grant. There is a provision that allows that, but only if you meet certain conditions. And that condition would be, that you've tried to look for a site in your own place and you've done this and you've done that. This charter can't do that. They want to keep the same site, and they want to open in Elk Grove. So they're waiving a slight condition of the law that currently exists for you to open a charter in another district.
Why does the sponsoring district, in this case Grant Joint Union, want to do it?
They want to take on these, it's 230 students who have a very similar program to theirs. It's Ukrainians.
Looks
They're
like we've
here.
got
I'd like to talk to them.
That'd be helpful.
My name is Cindy Peterson, and I'm with Grant Community Charters. And this is a California Charter Academy that about April 15th, as we know, blew up.